Hello everyone, thanks for joining me today. I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief explanation about scarcity. So in my last video we talked a little bit about what economics is, what wants and needs are, and why that matters. Right? Today we're going to talk a little bit about scarcity, right? This idea of scarcity are things being scarce. So first of all, let's take a look at the definition of scarcity. Scarcity is the condition in which our wants or needs are greater than the resources available. All right, so this causes, this basically simply put, scarcity equals wants are greater than the money that we have, right? We talked about this a little bit in that your wants are endless, right? We always want the newest phone or the newest iPad, or the newest house or the newest car, right? And as we keep getting offered these new technologies and these new products, we're going to want to spend our money on them, right? We're always going to want the new Xbox, we're always going to want the new PlayStation, the new video game, right? In addition to the things that we need to survive and we have to pay for every month, such as food and things like that. Okay, so scarcity is the wants are greater than the money available, right? This is a condition. It affects everybody, right? So there's a few things that we can learn, principles from scarcity. Principle number one, people have wants, right? Everybody wants things, right? We all want stuff, right? So because we have wants, and the fact that our wants are greater than the available resources, we have to make choices. And this is called economizing. So we take one want, maybe we want a $500 pair of headphones, right? Some audio file headphones that we can use to record music and have some good playback and all that. Well, at the same time, we also want to spend $500 on some new clothes. So what you do internally, whether you realize it or not, is think, what is better for me? Do I want these headphones, or do I want these clothes, right? So ultimately, some people might decide to choose the headphones, and some other people might decide to choose the clothes. Well, the reason being is because that brings different utility and different happiness towards people for various reasons. Well, the second principle of scarcity is that scarcity impacts everyone. Everybody is affected by scarcity. Because we don't have enough to satisfy everybody's wants, right? Scarcity is going to affect everyone. And we'll see this later when we talk about supply and demand, and how supply and demand are basically operate off of the principles of scarcity. So because of scarcity and its existence, it forces us to ask these three questions, right? What will be produced? How will it be produced? And for whom will it be produced? So you can take the example of a raw material resource, such as, let's say, steel. Right? Steel is very important. If you don't know, steel's in pretty much everything. It's in buildings, right? It's in cars. It's in your technology. It's in airplanes, right? So the idea is, let's just take steel for an example, right? And we need steel for all these various things. Well, we only have so much steel, right, in the country and in the world. So therefore, we have to ask the question, what will be produced? Rather, what will we use this steel for, right? Are we gonna, if we only have 100 tons of steel, right, are we going to use 50 tons to make cars, and 20 tons to make airplanes, and 5 tons to make electronics, right? So this forces us to ask this question: what are we going to do with our steel, right? Also, how will it be produced? What methods are we going to be using to produce these things? Because that matters too, right? There's certain methods in manufacturing that are more wasteful than others, right? So that's definitely important. And number three, for whom will it be produced? That's probably the most important of these questions, is for whom will it be produced, right? So how many car makers can you name? right? What if they only got a certain number of steel? Which car makers are going to get it? Who will be getting these cars, right? And we really have a simple answer in a capitalist economy is that the person that it's going to be produced for is the person that's available to pay for it, or to the highest bidder, rather. So in other economic systems, it'll be a little bit different. But in our economy, usually, for whom will it be produced is answered by the highest bidder. There's one exception to that, and that, of course, is during times of war in the United States government. You know, if you look back at World War II. So when we talk about scarcity, ultimately, scarcity forces rationing, right? And well, what is rationing? Well, rationing is a means for deciding who gets what portion of the available resources out there. So scarcity forces us into doing this because of the nature in which our wants are greater than the available resources. So if everybody's competing for these resources, how do we determine the means for deciding who gets what? Well, that's the hard part, unfortunately, and in our economy in today's day and age, this is mainly decided by the concepts of supply and demand, right? Well, when we have rationing, when you think of the word rationing, you might think of World War II and butter and chocolate and steel, even these pantyhose, right? Nylon was used in the paratroopers to make their cords for parachutes, right? Chocolate was used and rationed to the troops overseas. Butter was used for the same purpose. And of course, steel was used to make tanks and guns and that kind of thing. So when we talk about rationing, it's a way of prioritizing who gets what. Well, if we're in a war for existence, such as World War II, automatically the government is going to use these available resources and take first priority and use that to win the war, right? And that's pretty understandable. But in times of peace such as this, we have to figure out, well, how do we decide who gets what? And luckily, in this prosperous nation, we kind of have enough to go around, right? We have enough where all of our needs are covered, and it's really just our wants. And the best way that we ration things is really based off of the price, because if you can't afford it, you don't get it, right? Let's think about an example that's probably near and dear to all of you, right? How do we decide, what's the means for deciding who gets the portion of available Ferraris, right? Well, that's an easy answer. Who gets a Ferrari? Whoever has the money to afford it, right? And so we kind of apply this concept to everything else. Unfortunately, that is a little heartless in some cases, where who gets cancer treatment? Again, whoever can afford it. So it has its benefits and it has its downside. But I think that this is probably one of the more just and fair ways of determining it. Yes, people who have more money happen to claim more resources, but how else would we determine this? This is really the problem, because scarcity forces rationing, right? There's not enough. So how do we decide who gets what? And we can't just let the government decide. You know, that would be pretty unfair. And who would they decide? Well, whoever's friendly with the government, perhaps. We can't do it on race, right? Because then, you know, you can't decide who gets what available resources based on race or gender or religion, right? All of these things would be inherently evil. Therefore, the least worst option in America, anyways, is rationing and deciding who gets what based upon the financial ability to pay.